For today's video, we are talking about special angle pairs. This is another video with a lot of vocabulary. So the first thing we're going to want to do is get all of it written down, and then we're going to be using it to solve a bunch of problems. So our learning target today is I can find angle measures using special angle pairs. Please write down the date that you're watching this video. For your I know, you know a lot about angles that we learned about in our last video. And you know what an angle measure means. So there's several things you can write there. Then for our vocabulary, we have a lot. So if you need to pause the video, take your time, write all these things down. Please, 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 please do that. It is a lot, and it is all really, really important. Vocabulary is the most important part of this unit. There are a lot of names of things. So our first word is adjacent angles. Adjacent angles are two angles that share a common side and a point and do not overlap. So as we're going through this, we're going to be drawing some pictures, but first we're going to get all of this written down. So adjacent angles are two angles that share a common side and a point and do not overlap. So don't worry too much if you're like, oh man, what does that mean? I'm going to be drawing examples of all of those down below here once we finish the vocabulary. Congruent angles are angles with the same measure. They are equal. Congruent means they are equal. Vertical angles are angles opposite each other, and they're always congruent to each other. If you're not sure what that means by opposite to each other, again, we're going to be drawing some pictures in a little bit, so don't panic about that. Intersecting lines are two lines that meet at a point. They are two lines that cross each other. I drew a little picture down here of what two intersecting lines looks like. It's just two lines that cross. Most lines are intersecting because they cross. The opposite of that is parallel lines. Parallel lines are two lines that never intersect. And to show that they're parallel, we'll use this little symbol here, and I'll show you what that looks like in context in our notes here in a moment. But two lines that never intersect, which means they have to be going the same direction. They're next to each other, and they are never, ever, ever, even if they go on forever, they are never going to intersect. Perpendicular lines are two lines that intersect to form four right angles. Again, I drew a little picture here. It's a little hard to see, but there is a little square in each of the corners. That means it's four right angles. And then our last one is corresponding angles. Corresponding angles are angles that occupy corresponding positions when a line intersects two other parallel lines, and they are congruent. That's a lot of words. So pause the video here, get all this written down, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to show you what all of this actually means. So pause the video, write this down, then come back. Okay, hopefully you have all of that written down. We're going to be kind of moving back and forth and double checking these things. We're going to start with adjacent angles. Adjacent angles are two angles that share a common side and a point and do not overlap. So if I wanted to draw a picture of that, we're going to draw like this. So here I have an obtuse angle, but it has this line in the middle. And now we're going to put some points on here so we can name things. So we're going to say that that's point A, point B, point C, and point D. So now I have two angles. I have this angle here, and I have that angle there. And when we're labeling different angles that are different measures, we'll use it like this. So this shows that that's an angle. This double line means that this is another angle that has a different measure. Now, if I wanted to name this angle with the single line, then I want to name these sides here, this angle. I do that by naming the points in order. So if I on the edges, this is angle A, D, B. I could also call it angle B, D, A. Either way, but this is angle we're going to call it angle ADB. And to find that, I would just start at A, go to D, then go to B. Another angle here is angle BDC. That's this side and that side. Again, I could name it CDB, but I'm just going to name it for now BDC. Now, right here, angles ADB and angle BDC, they are adjacent angles. They are next to each other. They share a side, that's that line BD that I colored both pink and purple. They share the point D, and they don't overlap. They're not on top of each other, they're just right next to each other. Those are adjacent angles. Now, I could also have adjacent angles that look like this. Here I'm going to name my points E, F, G, H is my center one. So this angle, I'm going to name angle EHF. This angle, I would name angle FHG. Again, I'm just going around the points in order. Those angles are adjacent. They're also supplementary. I can tell they're supplementary because of this line right here. So these are adjacent supplementary angles. It's a big name, but that's what they're called. Adjacent, they're next to each other. Supplementary, they form 180 degrees. They form a straight line. And then my other type of adjacent angles will look like this. Maybe you can already guess what it's going to be called. Now that I have that square, we know that that is a right angle. So I draw a line here, and I name points on all of these lines. I'm going to name J, K, L, and M. Then I that angle J, M, K, that's this one right here, and angle K, M, L, which is this one right here, they are adjacent complementary angles. So that is adjacent angles. Our next thing I want to talk about is vertical angles. So vertical angles up here says that they're angles opposite each other, always congruent to each other, two lines that meet at point. Or sorry, angles opposite each other that are always congruent to each other. Okay? So here's what that looks like. Let's say I have a pair of intersecting lines like this. We always put arrows on our lines. That means that our lines could keep going forever and ever and ever, but we're just not going to draw that. I'm going to call these angles 1, 2, 3. Sorry, I changed my mind. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, if I was going to talk about what angles are opposite each other, angles that are opposite each other are the ones directly across. So that would be angle 1 and angle 3. Angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles. I could also say that angle 2, well, that's opposite angle 4. So angle 2 and angle 4 are vertical angles to each other as well. Now, what's really important about vertical angles is that they are congruent to each other. So if I tell you that the measure of angle 1 is 80 degrees, that means that the measure of angle 3, because they are vertical angles, has to be the same. So the angle 3 also has to be 80 degrees. Now, here's why that's really, really important. If I know that angle 1 is 180 degrees, now I can draw an arc. Arc connects me to a straight line. I know that a straight line has 180 degrees in it. That means that angles 1 and 2 have to equal 180 degrees. So if angle 1 is 80 degrees, angle 2 has to be 180 minus 80. So angle 2, 180 minus 80, well, that means that angle 2 is 100 degrees. And since 4 is across from it, it also has to be 100 degrees. What's really special about this is that if I have two intersecting lines like this, and I tell you one of the angles, I can find all 4 of them. And we're going to do another example like that in a moment here. Okay? The next thing was parallel lines. Parallel lines are two lines that never intersect. So parallel lines look like this. So if I have two parallel lines, look like this. To show that they're parallel, we put little arrows on them like this. That shows that they're going the same direction. So if I named this line M and I named this line N, I would say that M, those two lines, N, this is my shorthand again. This means M is parallel to N. Now, when I say parallel means they don't intersect, it also means they never intersect. For example, if I drew these two lines right here, these lines do not currently intersect, but I know that if I kept this line going, eventually these lines would intersect. These two lines are not parallel because eventually they would intersect. So it's very, very important to remember. Parallel means they do not intersect and they will never intersect. So then our last vocabulary word is corresponding angles. Corresponding angles are angles that occupy corresponding positions when a line intersects two other parallel lines. So I'm going to show you what that means. The first thing is a line that intersects two other parallel lines. So let's say I have parallel lines here and here. I know these are parallel because they're going the same direction, and I put that little arrow on there to show that they're parallel. I'm going to name the angles E and F. So now if I have a line intersecting those, we'll name him G, or line G. So line G intersects lines E and F. So the angles, to do corresponding angles, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to number all of these. I'm going to number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay? For corresponding angles, what I like to do is look at each place where I So here I have a spot where my lines intersected and it formed 4 angles. And here is my other spot where my lines intersected and formed 4 angles. The corresponding angles are the angles in the same position in each circle. One is in the top left of this circle. It corresponds to number 5. So I could say that angle 1 and angle 5 are corresponding angles. They're in the same position. I could also say that 2 and 6 are corresponding. 4 and 8 are corresponding, and 3 and 7 are corresponding because they occupy the same spot. Okay? Now, the reason this is important is because this means that corresponding angles are also congruent. So if I tell you angle 1 is 110 degrees, that means angle 5 is also 110 degrees. And then things get really exciting. Because now I can use all of the other things we've learned in the past 2 videos, and I can find the measures of every single other angle. For example, I know that 1 and 4 are opposite each other. That's vertical angles. That means 4 also has to be 110 degrees. This thing over here. 8 also has to be 110 degrees because it is vertical to angle 5, and it's also corresponding to angle 4. So all 4 of those are 110 degrees. The other thing is that these two angles, 1 and 2, they form a straight line. A straight line is 180 degrees. So if 1 is 110, 1 plus 2 has to be 180. So I have to do 180 minus 110 to find the measure of angle 2. Well, 180 minus 110, that's 70 degrees. Angle now is vertical to angle 3. That angle 3 is also 70 degrees. And this looks the same down below. 6 and 7 are corresponding to 2 and 3. Now these two are also 70 degrees. So what's really valuable here is that if I know one angle, I can find all of the other angles. So there's going to be a bunch of chances for you to practice this in this folder. I know it's a little bit complicated and confusing, but we're going to be practicing this a bunch. Please let me know if you have any questions. Have a great day.